5 areas impacting the future of HR. So we wanted to make this conversation broad-reaching and accessible to everybody because we've got different perspectives in the room, right? We've got employers, we have employees, we have freelancers, we have retirees, right? So what are the 5 trends that are impacting all of us in this room? And the first one that I want to talk about is workplace flexibility. So when you think of workplace flexibility, what does that mean? And why should people pay attention to it?
Well, it's a really great question. And I think for many companies, it means something different. But when we talk to employees about what is workplace flexibility and what does that mean to you, it means being able to balance the demands of work and the demands of life. And for everybody, that may look a little different depending on if your business is in person, hybrid, or remote. But we are seeing more companies venture to the hybrid or the fully remote environment. And if we're talking about that specifically, to dive even a little deeper, we're finding that for remote employees, it truly means being able to fit their work in their day around their life. Now, I know that sounds really crazy to some, and we were talking about that, I think, was that this morning?
Yeah.
And, how we're very, very blessed to be able to do that with our work. And we recognize that not every company or business can, but when you're able to provide team members that opportunity to truly, we say live their best life, and still be a high performer, finding ways to do that in your business in whatever fashion that looks like is truly what team members are looking like. So it's less of, hey, if you're remote, we want you to be online between 8 to 5. Or if you're hybrid, we want you in the office Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Team members are really looking for the flexibility of, hey, well, we expect you in the office 3 days a week. And maybe you designate that one of them is like a meeting day, so everybody's there at the same time. But it's really less structure and more flexibility, but still with boundaries.
Yeah. And you all aren't on camera, so this isn't getting to your bosses. But quick show of hands, who feels that their sweet spot is the traditional 9 to 5 work block? There's one. I won't name that person, but so glad you're here. How many people are maybe early risers? Maybe you feel that 6 a.m., that 5 a.m. when the world is still quiet. Okay, about half or more than half. Are there any night owls in the room? Yeah. I saw some people raise their hand twice. So when do you all sleep? If you're working in the morning and you're working at night, but that's the flexibility that we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So I talk about this concept or this idea of thinking about the work day, not within the confines of like 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, but that 24-hour time block. Because for someone, their best work day may be getting a head start at 7 a.m. because they have like kids to shuttle to school, right? And then they're coming back and they'll work for a little bit, but then maybe they want to take a midday yoga session, right? And then they'll come back and work in the afternoon, grab their kids, soccer practice, whatever, and then log a few hours at night when the kids are in bed. Or, people who are traveling and maybe they enjoy being a freelancer or work on the road, and maybe they're on a plane for 3 hours in the middle of the day, and then they want to stop and hang out at the airport lounge and put some time in. So really just evaluating that workplace flexibility. I think employers who are able to offer that are going to be very successful in this current battle for talent that we have. And I know for those who are listening to this and say, well, we're retail, we're hospitality, we're brick and mortar, people have to show up. Just greater flexibility around shifts and flexibility of calling out and being able to have some support for individuals who may need to call out for an appointment or whatever the case may be.
If I can add to that, I would also say for those that are kind of the physical in-person employers, it is also ensuring that you're providing your team appropriate notice for meetings. So it's being respectful of their obligations outside of work, and recognizing that, if you just pop a meeting on the calendar on very short notice, that might mean that they might be missing a doctor's appointment or something that's really important to them. And the question that I always ask, really anybody that I'm talking to who's like, hey, like, Summer, how are you doing this? Because, I want to do it, but I'm not quite sure it's going to work for my business. The first thing I ask them is, well, what are your competitors doing? Right? Because if your competitors are doing it, then you should be able to do it too. And if you're competing for that same talent, and we already know that employees want this flexibility, where do you think they're going to look to? You or your competitor?
Right. And it's no longer about the competitor in your backyard. It's the competitor across state lines, right? So the game has changed with regard to the options people have for employment, and workplace flexibility is super, super important to attract great folks. The next thing we will talk about is inflation's influence on retention. Those gas prices, the gas miles aren't hitting the way that they used to hit. It got up to what, $20 in California at one point?
Oh man, I didn't see that, but I will say after I saw the trees here, I saw that gas was like around 350, and it's about 650 where I'm at right now. So definitely, I think team members everywhere are feeling the pinch in one way or another.
Yeah, everything's more expensive, from the gas to the milk to the eggs to education to cell phones. Everything is becoming more expensive, and I'm no economist, but if it's more expensive to live, then it's probably more expensive to commute to work, to live our life. So what are some of the things that inflation's playing on retention and attracting people?
Well, it's a really great question. And I actually had a situation come up with one of our clients recently where a team member went to their manager and said, hey, my landlord just raised my rent about 10%, and I was already kind of living paycheck to paycheck, and I feel really bad asking, but is there any way I can get a raise? And I mean, it's an honest question and challenge that employees are facing right now. And unfortunately, this organization's a nonprofit. They have a very set salary structure. And unfortunately, there's just not a process in place to be able to make that type of adjustment. And the harsh reality is this team member is likely going to look for another opportunity, because we all know if you leave your job right now, chances are you're going to leave for something that pays more, if not significantly more. And those are the challenges, the direct things that we're seeing come right out of the inflation. So I think there's a lot of challenges, but we will see more of that.
Yep.
And if it's not happening at your companies now, definitely expect it to be happening soon.
Yeah, and not just the cost of things going up, but it's our retirement portfolios going down. I don't even want to look at mine right now, as there's a collective groan in the room. But when prices go up, people stop spending, and when people stop spending, the values of companies go down, and when the values of companies go down, their share prices reflect that. So it's a cycle effect of when you raise prices, things happen. And of course, people will tell you that recessions don't last always, and we've always bounced back, and that is true. The trend line for example, S&P 500 is still up and to the right. But who's to say that the person who was looking to retire now, they won't be working a little bit longer, or maybe a retiree may say, my portfolio is not enough, I'm going to go back and find employment. So we're seeing a lot of boomerang and was it silver, gray collar workers coming back into the workforce, because the amount of money that they were going to live on just isn't enough, and so they're finding ways to supplement income.
To that, I would also mention that with some of these challenges you were talking about, kind of that cycle effect, right? So companies needing to find ways to also cut costs. And often we will see the first thing that some of our clients want to do is, well, we just need to cut our workforce. And so we say, well, time out. Time out. Yes, that may be an option, but let's look at this holistically, because we all know that at some point business is going to turn around and you're still going to need great people to run your business. So where else can we save? And now is the time, if companies haven't already started to take a look at, well, what can we do to save or maybe not spend money we were planning on spending so that we can preserve our people, because you will need those good people.
Yeah. You'll need the people, and you'll need that institutional knowledge that gets lost when people who've been at the organization for a while leave. And it's not just like, the old movie Office Space, the guy walking around like, where's my stapler? Where's my stapler? But it's, how do we make critical decisions? Who are the key influencers in the organization and why? When people leave with that knowledge and it's not transferred to somebody else, then you really set your organization back. Anything else on inflation's influence on retention you want to talk about?
No, I think those are the main points.
Okay.
We've got a lot to still cover.
Yeah. So let's tackle one that I like a lot is potential for training and working in the metaverse. It's interesting because this is a point that I still believe is going to be a important factor in the future. But with the economy the way that it is, I don't think that the adoption is going to catch on as quickly. But we're already seeing companies like Xerox, where you put a headset on and you're able to learn how to repair copy machines and printers. Imagine if you're able to take sales calls with a virtual person and show, I don't know, I like boats. So imagine if you can ship a headset out to somebody and you have a headset and you're able to do a virtual tour of a boat. Or even a repairman is able to say, well, put this headset on and I'll tell you how it's supposed to look. Or, if you think about training a person for retail, and you can have a simulation of like angry customers, happy customers, customers that need different things, we can program games or tools and software in the metaverse to scale up our ability to do training, to do learning, and at a reduced cost, right? You can build in the metaverse less than maybe creating a whole set or training environment. So I think that's going to be important. What do you think?
Well, I must say that before I started working with you, I had never even heard of the metaverse. So I don't know if I'm the only person in the room who was like, the meta who? But the more that we started to talk about it and I started to look into, kind of this virtual world or virtual space where we can interact with one another, it really started to fascinate me. And the more that I started to find that companies are beginning to venture in this space, I did see the potential exactly as you described. And, I think about how much this is going to evolve over the next several years. And, it makes me think about, I'm pretty sure everybody in this room remembers what it was like not to have an iPhone, right? And we got by, right? We were good. We found ways to still accomplish it. But now, can you imagine your life without it now?
No, mine is here.
But that's my point, is it's something that we didn't know that we would utilize to the degree that we do. And our lives have totally changed because of it. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but that's what I'm predicting in regards to the metaverse. It has a while to go. But I do think that we will find very unique, creative ways to utilize that environment to elevate what we know is our remote workforce and the way that we interact now. So imagine if a larger percentage of workers worked remote and were interacting in the metaverse versus through Zoom, right? I mean, I know it sounds crazy,
I really do think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, and it may sound crazy, but I'll ask the audience who had a Tamagotchi. Does anybody remember that?
Oh,
okay,
sure.
all right, yeah, a digital pet. Okay, who played The Sims or plays The Sims or Roller Coaster Tycoon? Right, digital world. Right, who plays Xbox or PlayStation or mobile gaming? Right, digital world. The only difference now is that it will be more immersive because you'll have a headset or glasses or something like that. So believe it or not, you've already been groomed for the metaverse. It's just, the idea of using a headset is scaring us a little bit, but it's coming. It's coming for sure. All right, let's move right along. Bespoke employee training and development. So basically, eliminating the idea of employee training being a one-size-fits-all approach. What are your thoughts?
Well, I feel like as a team and what we work with our clients and just the approach that I've personally taken over the course of my career, it has already been this way. Now I recognize that, not all companies are able, like in their present state, to be that flexible. But I do think that when we look at, trends and next year and going forward, that there is going to need to be a greater emphasis on developing talent, to finding ways to upskill, to identifying gaps in what you need for a certain role versus what you have. And we've had a lot of conversations with our clients to meet their talent needs. And there's a lot of talk about upskilling, right? Look at your current workforce. Look at the potential that you have there. What do you need to do to develop them into the team member that you need to fill your gaps? And that is a different type of training. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I'll just ride your coattails a little bit on that last part about thinking about the team you have today and the gaps that you have. Well, not every organization has the same gaps. So you'll need to find training that fits the gaps that you have. You'll need to find training and create training that fits the skills that your team members bring to the table. And it's incredibly important to do this because, again, thinking about why people leave, right? Leaving for opportunities for growth and development. How many have taken a job because you just got bored where you were working and you wanted a new challenge, right? There's some hands in the room. So thinking about what can we do as employers to keep people in the room, keep people on our teams excited, motivated, and that's meeting them where they are with the skills that they're looking to develop.
We've had a lot of conversations lately about career pathing, and I think this all fits together. And, for our clients, that means helping them build a structure and a process that they can share not only with internal leadership, but with their team members, so that there is a vision, so that a team member can say, well, if I'm, whatever the position is, if I'm an individual contributor and I look at the career path, my role falls into this tier or this grade. Now, if I want to move up to the next one, then there's a clear list of what some of the skills, some of the knowledge, some of the experience that's necessary to move into that tier. So that's a really great tool for team members to say, I have a future here. If I want to move up, I need to work in this area. It's a great tool also for managers to have conversations with their team members to say, you're performing really well here, but we really need to focus on this one skill. So let's work on that. And then maybe next year when we're doing performance reviews or the process that some companies have established to promote, then there's a clear path to get there. That's what team members are asking for. And I think, it speaks directly to needing to create that specific training to help team members get there.
Yeah. We could probably go on and on about this. We're nerds. So, but we'll keep it moving. The last one is probably the most important, which is overall employee well-being. And when I think of well-being, I think of uh, your safety, and we've kind of experienced that over the past couple of years, and making sure employers keep us safe. But it's now becoming more important for HR to take on the role of mental health advocate too, and make sure that we're creating opportunities to connect with therapists, or with meditation apps, or with any other groups that might want to sponsor this podcast. But the idea of being that mental health coach, that financial wellness person, HR is getting a lot on their plate, but really, who else is going to do it, unfortunately. But what are your thoughts on employee overall well-being?
Well, we've spoke about this quite a bit, but I love the idea and the concept of supporting the whole person. So removing the thought and the label of employee, like, yes, they're your worker, they're your employee. But if you're only thinking about that individual as a worker, you are missing the whole person. So the concept of taking care of this whole person, it includes benefits. Now, I'm a benefits nerd, so I'm always thinking about like making sure that somebody can take care of their health, right? Because if their health is not taken care of, they're not going to be able to perform work for you.
That's right.
We've talked about their financial well-being, setting companies up with some sort of vehicle to help their team members save for their future. Now, we set up a lot of 401k plans. I love it. That's my
401ks, 403bs,
Yep.
IRAs. I'll stop.
And, oftentimes they're met with, well, we can't afford that. And it's like, well, hold on. Like, you don't have to do a match. Like, even if you're providing like a vehicle for tax savings and investing in an easy fashion, that's not very expensive to do. So in addition to the things that you mentioned, I mean, we look at this whole person and finding ways to take care of them mentally, financially, take care of their health, and kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, finding ways to meet their needs with that flexibility, that takes care of their well-being as well, because they're going to be able to put themselves like integrated with their work life seamlessly.
Yeah, and I would say great advice. But I would also add, taking care of the employee's well-being for the good of the employee. I've realized that big tech firms will have like cafeterias or commuting, and I was like, wow, they're so forward thinking. They really care about their team. But really, what they were doing is removing barriers from you from working. I've traveled to Facebook and seen these luxury coaches that they will shuttle people around the bay. But you better believe they have really good Wi-Fi, because they expect you to be working while you're sitting in traffic, right? So that has the opposite effect, where you're creating a perk or a benefit that will fuel burnout and fuel exhaustion. But if you can create wellness opportunities that actually refresh or recreate or reset the individual, then they'll lean in and be more productive and engaged.